Speaking of alumni, at this point, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce one alumnus that has very, very much to celebrate. Ryan Neeson graduated from the U of L in 2001. Since then, he has used the foundation that he built right here at the U of L to take him on the road less traveled. He has used a radical approach to get a purpose-driven job working for a millionaire that he ended up meeting in Hawaii. After he met him, he drove all the way down to Austin, Texas in order to pursue his dreams and to be mentored by this very successful person. In the last year, he's co-founded a company called The Gateway Method, with a fellow alumni, Andrew Hewitt. Together, they help people find and get dream jobs with very purpose-driven organizations. So using some examples from some of the world's top purpose-driven organizations and revealing how they are fundamentally changing how the world works, this presentation by Ryan today will excite you about how this upcoming journey charge you with taking control of your own education and inspire you to envision an amazing future, both as a student and as part of a global community. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ryan Neeson to the stage.
Thanks, man. Cool. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Everybody hear me okay? This is working? Good? Cool. Let me just get my presentation fired up here. And just to clarify for everyone, I'm not sure if you said 2001 or 2011 there, but I know I look younger than I actually am, and so definitely didn't graduate in 2001. It was 2011. Cool. That looks like it's good to go. All right, so good morning, everyone, and welcome here. You got some great wisdom from everyone so far today, and I'm honored to be here, and I want to thank the U of L for inviting me. So I also want to thank my friend Andrew Hewitt, who you mentioned here, for allowing me to borrow and tweak this presentation for you guys here today as well. I have to confess that I'm actually a little intimidated to be here with you guys today, mainly because, like I mentioned, I look younger than most of you, and I've seen at least 5 or 6 people with beards that I'm envious of right now. So, but believe it or not, I did actually start where you guys are about 8 years ago and graduated about 3 years ago. So the math geniuses out there can confirm that that means I took 5 years to finish my degree, as they mentioned here. So that mysterious 5th year, what happened then? I'd like to start off with my story about that 5th year. So it was 2009, and I had just finished my 3rd year of university here, and I figured I knew it all. I knew it all. I had taken some great classes. I learned some marketing stuff. I'm a marketing major, and so I was going to take a year off to get rich. That was my scheme. And so I was working for a golf company at the time, and we were doing golf tournaments. So we do take photos and do the scoring for them. So super exciting stuff. And a lucrative opportunity came up to sell golf umbrellas, and these were no ordinary golf umbrellas. You could attach them to the side of a golf cart and drive around with them open. Super exciting stuff. So with the promise of very lucrative commissions, I decided to take a year off and become a millionaire selling these. The main problem being with that is that I'm a terrible salesperson. So after a few months of trying and failing with that, I decided to call it quits and moved on to the next thing. Fortunately, I had another plan, which was to learn about stock trading. So I went to a weekend stock trading course with a buddy, and we came out of there with a scheme to borrow $10,000 and start investing in the market in stocks and options. And fortunately, our parents talked us out of that before we were able to lose $10,000. Next thing after that was door-to-door sales, which lasted about 4 days because I hated it. The guy that was training me was selling sponsorships to kids to help kids in Africa, and he was lying to people at the door in order to sell them sponsorships in Africa, telling them that he had kids in Africa that he sponsored. So all in all, pretty sleazy, not very fun. My final scheme on my year off was working as a professional real estate investor. And so I spent 6 months working diligently to try to find deals and negotiate some great deals and make money, but I'm also a terrible negotiator, it turns out, so that didn't work out either. I completed my year off and pretty much used all my savings. I was living with my parents at the time, and I had no exciting opportunities on the go. So all in all, not very successful. So I pretty much hit rock bottom, and I learned a very important lesson, which is that if life slaps you around enough, you should probably start paying attention. So I did, and that was a big turning point for me, which was great because I discovered something very important, which is that I was in the ultimate zone of career suckiness as opposed to the ultimate zone of career awesomeness, which is the title of today's presentation. Yeah, I'm going to keep it light here today, by the way. Career awesomeness. So I did go on to discover the secret to getting into the ultimate zone of career awesomeness, which I'm going to share with you guys here today. But I want to start with walking you through why I think many people wind up in the zone of suckiness instead. So let's start out here, see if I can work this remote. All right. Nice work, tech guy. We are good to go. So let's start off with a stat here, which is that the average American child watches 4 hours of TV every day. And what are they watching there? We see success painted to us through the media. So we see, turn this page, sorry. We see the good life. We see success painted to us, and it's funny because we're often so programmed by marketing and media, and yes, we're happy because they eat lard. So that made sense back in the day, funny enough. So what do we do to create a successful life? We wind up where you guys all are. We go to university, which is great, and while we're there, 73.8% of students choose their major based on salary potential. So that's the first strategy that people typically employ. Next up, we try to get good grades. Makes sense. Employers want to hire smart people, so get good grades. Third, you'll prepare, or most people will prepare their resume for mass distribution, thinking that the more people that they send it out to, the better chances are of getting hired for internships, summer jobs, careers. But when we go back and look at how these strategies actually work, we find that they aren't so effective. So kaboom, Batman style. You guys seen the old Batmans? They had that. It's awesome. Over 70% of people report being unhappy in their career. So clearly the first strategy of choosing your major based on salary potential isn't working out. So sorry if any of you guys have already done that. You're going to be miserable. Next up, focus on getting great grades. How does that work out? Well, turns out that GPA ranks 11th on a list of top 20 of what employers look for when they're hiring. So don't take this as an excuse for slacking off and getting terrible grades. You still need to get good grades. Don't worry, guys. You're going to get good grades. But it's just not the most important thing. There are other things that they look for. Third, prepare your resume for mass distribution. How does that work out? Well, less than 1% of resumes submitted result in a job offer. So clearly, there are better ways to do some of this stuff. So when we step back and look at this, we see that maybe this default path to success isn't working out so great. So anyways, what happens next? Well, we'll graduate from university, and surely none of the parents here would wind up doing this, but sometimes we'll have parents barking at us to go and get a job. However, we're actually facing a much different and more challenging job market these days. It's not the same as when our parents graduated or previous generations graduated. So what some people do is go to grad school, which is a very costly investment and works out great for some people. But for other people, it winds up being the path of the prolonger. So if you're not quite sure what you want to do with your life, maybe go to grad school and you bide some more time to figure it out. Like I said, for some people it can work out great. For other people, they wind up in this thunk position of graduating with spending 6+ years of their time and energy and money into education and wind up not having the same opportunity that previous generations might have got because it is a more challenging job market. And you wind up in a position of I'll take anything, which frankly sucks and bothers me because you invested all of this time and energy, and you wind up in a position of not being able to get your dream job. So let's move on. So that's one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got people like Andrew's friend. Andrew's the guy who let me borrow this presentation, again, my friend and co-founder of my company. His friend Mike, who he met at a student leadership group actually here at U of L. Mike was a smart guy. He did it all right in school. He got great grades. He went to the student networking clubs. He did it all right. And so he winds up graduating and getting hired by a corporate advertising company. And he's a smart guy, so he gets some carrots, some promotions, and winds up working more each time, but also making more money. And pretty soon, he winds up being 27 years old and promoted to be the youngest creative director in the company, which is awesome. So he's got a great, from the outside looking in, he's got a great job. He's making 6 figures at 27. He's got a beautiful car, beautiful home. But he winds up a couple years later giving Andrew a phone call and telling him that he has never felt so miserable and purposeless and lost. So let's take a look. There's a quick video here I want to show you guys about how that can feel like. You guys see that okay? Yeah. Just another day in Lethbridge, right? Bad morning. So that's what that can feel like when you spend 27 plus years working towards something, doing it all right, and then wind up miserable. So Mike found himself in a similar position to where I was after my year off, which was essentially rock bottom, or the ultimate zone of suckiness. And so the difference is that he was 30 and I was about 22. But you guys are fortunate because you can take our lessons and our failures and start applying this today. So what happened to Mike and I? Well, Mike realized that he was telling people that buying new cars would make them happy, when really his reality was telling him different. Or selling Coke to people would make them happy, again, working through his advertising company, when really it was the cause of diabetes and more issues like that. So he really ultimately felt like his work didn't align with his values, and he was contributing to the problems in the world more than anything. So, just find this slide. So here's some images of just the problems in the world. So he winds up having this epiphany moment where he's like, WTF, I realize that my definition of success means making money and improving social status. And how did I wind up here? So Mike goes into freak-out mode, and it's really quite a traumatic moment for him. Kind of like if you guys lose your cell phone for an hour or two. Am I right? Yeah? Anyways, so Mike's saving grace arrives. Your cell phone is found. It was just in your friend's car or something lame like that. And he winds up asking himself these 3 questions here, which are, what if I measured my success based on the amount of meaning in my life rather than the amount of money? What if I used business as a force for good and contributed my strengths to something that inspired me? So Mike quits and winds up going overseas, and he starts applying his strengths from the advertising world to projects that he really cares about that make a difference and an income for him. And so he winds up having a pretty big impact and making a solid income all in a relatively short period of time, as he's working with like the government of Ethiopia and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and other cool projects like that. And so Mike is not the only one. There's actually an entire movement of people going through a similar process and applying a particular formula to get into the ultimate zone of career awesomeness. And so that formula, I'm going to tell you in a second here, but I don't want you guys to write this down or anything. That doesn't look like you have anything to write it down anyways. But I want you to ingrain this into your mind as much as you can. I'm going to repeat it a few times more for you guys throughout this presentation. So the formula is to tap into your strengths, your values, and your inspiration to get a job that makes an income and an impact at the same time. So that sweet spot of those 5 elements will get you into the ultimate zone of career awesomeness. So we left off my story with me hitting rock bottom and crying in my parents' basement. I didn't actually say that before, that's okay. So anyways, what I decided to do was go back to school and finish my degree, which was smart, but I also started learning outside of school. So I started attending some super nerdy conferences and events, and over the next couple of years as I finished my degree, I really started to work at this formula as I discovered it, which is I worked at tapping into my strengths, so taking tons of tests and assessments, which you can find easily online, figure out what I'm good at and what I hate and suck at. I worked at figuring out my core values, or what I wanted in my life, and my inspiration, so my passions, what I really wanted to do. And I wound up graduating a couple of years later with my marketing degree, which was fantastic. And about 6 months later, I was about to attend an event in Hawaii that would change my life. And I hadn't found a great job by then that I really wanted, but I had a good feeling about it. And I was right, because that's actually where I met Andrew Hewitt and where I landed my dream job as well. So in Hawaii, Andrew was on stage, and he was one of my 2 favorite speakers there. Get to the right line. So in his presentation, he was talking about a new movement of for-benefit businesses. And so these, you guys probably haven't heard of this before, but these are businesses that are maximizing benefit and profit at the same time. And so you can imagine a younger version of me sitting there watching Andrew on stage, writing notes furiously as I realized that this is the future. Because I'm sure some of you guys have felt this, but at that point, I had this feeling that just something was just messed up with how the world was being run and businesses and everything. And so I was ecstatic to see Andrew there and see that smart people were working on this problem. And so at the time of Andrew's talk, there was no existing database of these for-benefit companies. But as you can see, there's a chart here. So anyways, for-benefit companies are at the top right there. So they're maximizing income and purpose. And I have a sweet laser here that I want to try out, so that works. Awesome, right there. So you guys probably know that for years we've recognized success based on the Fortune 500, which is based on revenue alone. And so Andrew, being the genius he is, thought that, hey, we really need a new list. And so he couldn't find one, and he decided to create one. And he called it the Game Changers 500, which is a list of the world's top for-benefit businesses, or purpose-driven companies is another way to say it. And so here's the beauty of the Game Changers 500 list, in my opinion. It's not just based on one thing. It's not just based on revenue like the Fortune 500. It's actually based on 9 badges, which you'll see here, broken down into 3 categories. Handy dandy laser. Again, why you're in business, what the business offers, and how you run your business. And you can see the badges in there, so there are things like meet the mission here under there. So is there a purpose to your business beyond just making money? You can see some other badges under what your business offers. Is it making an impact beyond the local region? And then how you run your business, which is probably what you guys are most interested in as you get summer jobs and start your careers. Do they have an exceptional work environment? So Google comes to mind, if you guys have seen The Internship, pretty hilarious movie with some great insight into Google's culture. Empowered employees, so do you have autonomy or freedom? So for the last couple of years at my dream job, I'll tell you about it in a little bit, I've been able to work from my laptop from anywhere in the world on pretty flexible hours, so an example of empowerment. They also have earth-friendly offices and eco-design of products and stuff like this, and you can find this at GameChangers500.com, so I'm not going to go into detail on this too much, but the point is that these new badges, or these 9 badges, are a new point system for ranking companies. So when you're applying for jobs, you can look at that company and ask yourself how many badges would they get. So I want to show you guys just a couple of examples here now of these purpose-driven companies. So obviously Google comes to mind, and they have a sweet campus-themed office, like you guys probably saw in The Internship. They've got massage rooms and slides between the floors and stuff like that. But I want to take you around the globe to Malaysia, where a lesser-known company lives called Mindvalley. I'll just zoom over there. You can see some examples of the other ones. And Mindvalley was one of the first companies on the Game Changers 500 list, and they're an education business. So they sell apps and online courses, and they have 4-day training events in tropical locations called Awesomeness Fest, which, as you can imagine, are pretty awesome. That's actually where I met Andrew and got this whole thing started too. So Mindvalley is a really cool company, and they have employees from over 20 different countries, so they're quite desirable to work at, and I want to show you guys just a quick video of what it's like. That's the end of the video somehow. Don't know how that happened, but that's okay, we'll roll with it. What you would have seen is a very cool office. Anyways, I guess something's bound to happen. So I'll just tell you guys more about Mindvalley then. So they really focus on a lot of things, but what they have is, since they have employees from over 20 different countries, they have local culture days, which I believe I have a slide on. So yeah, so they have local culture days. So every once a month, they'll have one of their different employees from a different culture make a meal and a celebration, and they'll all party and hang out together, and it's great for team bonding and all that stuff. They also really focus on empowering their employees, and they truly believe that doing good and being happy is actually good business. So for you guys, this would be an awesome place to work. They have an emphasis on growth and learning. So they've got these 45-hour work weeks where 5 of your hours must be spent on studying or on growth and learning. So you can read a book on marketing or on personal development or whatever. You can do courses, you can do seminars, and though this all sounds probably pretty lame to you guys right now, I can tell you as you get older, you'll probably discover that when you get into your career, the more valuable the knowledge is up here, the more the bigger your paycheck will be. So this is important that they have this, and they can help you guys grow and learn together. They also have wow rewards. So when an outrageous goal is hit at the company, they offer things like an iPad to everyone or something like that. And they have profit sharing too. So 10% of their profits are shared with the company every quarter. So they want people to benefit in the success of the company financially as well. But the coolest part about them, I think, is that they have an annual company retreat. So once a year, they'll take all their employees to a paradise island. They're in Malaysia, so they've got lots of stuff around there, like Thailand and cool places. And they'll just go hang out and do team building and party and have fun and all that stuff. So very attractive place to work. And there are lots more examples like these at GameChangers500.com. The point is that there are tons of companies out there. There are thousands, and tons of opportunity for you guys moving forward, because I really believe that companies like these are the way of the future. Obviously, we've got the Game Changers 500. Big companies like Google are on there. Tom's shoes, which I'm wearing right now, are on there. And so lots of really great companies. And so there are tons of opportunities for you guys these days, and this is all really relatively new. We're in a pretty fortunate place where we are right now. 10 years ago, this same opportunity didn't exist. But big companies are discovering this movement as well and converting to purpose-driven companies because they realize the importance of this movement, and they know that they'll be left behind in the dust if they don't jump on board. So on to the next thing. So hearing Andrew present all this stuff on stage that day in Hawaii was the final piece of this puzzle for me, which again is to tap into your strengths, your values, and your inspiration to get a job that makes an impact and an income. Impact and an income. All these I's. So anyways, to show you guys that I don't just walk the talk. Don't just talk the talk. I walk the walk, or I walk and talk, or something like that. This final story I want to tell you guys is about. What's the next slide here? Okay, so the final story I want to tell you guys is about how I tapped into my strengths and values and inspiration to get my dream job with a purpose-driven company. And so this also happened in Hawaii when I met Andrew and heard him talk about all of this as well. And I employed a pretty radically different approach, as mentioned in my bio, to getting my job. And so one of the other speakers in Hawaii, my other favorite speaker, was a guy named Robert, who was a millionaire CEO of a rapidly growing online education company. And his talk blew me away so much so that I was sitting there in the audience, and I knew at that moment that I had to work for him. And I was ready to do whatever it took to get a job with him, basically. He had a great mission that I really cared about, online education in the financial space, and working with him would be in alignment with my strengths and values and inspiration. And he was also a millionaire, so clearly working for him, I'd be able to learn how to make a lot of money, which was cool. So anyways, after that talk, and I realized that I had to work for him, I met him. I made a point of meeting him in the bar after the events that day, and so they had a networking party every night at these events, which was a lot of fun. And I was lucky and honored to be mentored by him for about 45 minutes. And that was a pretty life-changing talk for me, because at the end, he seemed impressed with me as well and decided to give me his business card and told me to email him about a job. So I knew I had his attention, but I had to guarantee again that I got a job with him. So I assessed what I had to offer, and I had a degree, which was great, but many people have degrees. I didn't have any relevant skills or experience that would help him and his company. What I did have was my character, so I could express my humility, my willingness to learn and grow, and my passion for their cause. And so I decided after the event, I waited a couple days and sat on it and decided to send him one of the more scary emails in my life, which had the subject line in all capitals, "I'm the one you've been looking for." So he still tells this story to today, by the way. So that got his attention, and in that email, I offered to work for free for 3 months. And the reason I did that is because I knew that after working for him for about 2 or 3 years, I would be able to do pretty much anything that I wanted. And so it was worth it to pay that price and live off instant noodles for those 3 months, which, by the way, you guys are all going to be familiar with pretty soon. So after a couple emails and some persistence and some phone calls, I wound up being invited down to meet their team and was offered actually a job. I was offered a paid position right off the bat. I didn't have to honor my offer of working for free for 3 months. So lucky me, I didn't have to live off noodles. So anyways, I got the job, and they were located in Austin, so I decided to, fortunately, my girlfriend at the time was a good sport and decided to move down all the way to Texas with me, which Texas, Austin in particular, is actually a pretty cool city. It's not just full of what you might expect. I won't dive into that, but it's really cool, a really hip place. So today, it's about 2.5 years later, and I'm happy to say that my crazy approach worked. There were a lot of challenges along the way, for sure. But the biggest thing for me is that I've seen how a multi-million-dollar business is built and run. And so now I'm on my way to starting, mind you, I'm on my way to building my own, which is my ultimate dream. And like I mentioned in my bio, it's called the Gateway Method. And I started that with Andrew Hewitt, a fellow alumnus here. And so none of this would have been possible without the formula that I've been talking to you guys about here today, which is to tap into your strengths, your values, and your inspiration to get a job that makes an income and an impact. So I did that, and I made Robert an irresistible offer. I knew there was no way that he would turn down me working for 3 months, for free for 3 months. And by the way, this is a great strategy for you guys starting out, but you have to make sure that it's someone who is 100% in alignment with everything that we're talking about here. Otherwise, you're just going to waste 3 months of your time and be broke. So I want to leave you guys with one final message here today, which is to start now. Don't wait until you're 22 like me or 30 like Mike to start applying this formula. Use your next 4 years here as your training ground, and take charge of your education inside and outside of the school walls. Spend the time needed to take the strengths tests, the values tests, they're easy to find, by the way, and to tune into your inspiration and figure out what you're really passionate about. And dream big. So use the foundation that you build here at the U of L to work for or start a for-benefit company like we've talked about here today, so you can make a difference and a living at the same time. And today, I want to leave this wisdom in your very capable hands and challenge you to tap into your strengths, your values, and your inspiration to get a career that makes an impact and an income. So I ask you, do you have what it takes to get into the ultimate zone of career awesomeness? Thanks.
Thank you.